The 2024 NFL Scouting Combine has come and gone, and with it, Texas walks away a pretty big winner for its foreseeable future underneath Steve Sarkisian. He's got things running and humming in the 40 acres, and that was evident by the performances put on by Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat, Ja'Tavion Sanders, Adonai Mitchell, and of course, 4.21 40-yard record holder Xavier Worthy. The Longhorns proved last year that they belonged in the college football playoff, as evident by winning the Big 12 title for the first time since 2009. But after the performance of Mitchell, Sanders, and Worthy, questions started coming up. Was Quinn Ewers one of the major problems that held the Longhorns back from winning a national title? And will he now be one of the major problems that holds the Longhorns back from finding success in the SEC in 2024? What's up, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the ring notification down below. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC Unfiltered, because we talk SEC sports every single day on this platform. Comment below. Do you think Quinn Ewers was one of the biggest problems for the Longhorns run last season underneath Steve Sarkisian? And change is inevitable. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros about this channel. We're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking SEC sports on the regular. Download the podcast version of the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure you follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, my own YouTube channel at Mr. Cole Thompson, to keep up to date with everything that we're doing on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you see fit. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button at SEC Unfiltered. And for the #1 content surrounding college footballs and really college athletics' greatest conference, make sure that you visit secunfiltered.com. So, was Quinn Ewers the problem for Texas in 2023? Not necessarily, but there's reasons to believe that there's at least a conversation that needs to be had. Texas started off the season 5-7 when they were running things underneath Casey Thompson. They bring over Quinn Ewers, initially supposed to commit to the program, but decides to reclassify, not really sold on what's going on the 40 acres with Tom Herman, and hitches his wagon to Ryan Day in Ohio State. He comes down, he immediately wins the starting job over Hudson Card, and things look promising. There's a great performance heading in the likes of week 2 against Alabama. You see the 42-yard pass to Xavier Worthy, and everyone thinks in Austin, this is the solution. This is exactly what we have been praying for. This is exactly what we have been hoping for years. And then, of course, you hear about the Dallas Turner hit. He's out for 3 weeks. They lose 2 games. He comes back. And there's trepidation, one solid performance and then one lackluster performance. And it was more the same in 2023 when you truly break it down. You have an exceptional outing against Alabama where you throw 3 touchdowns, march into Nick Saban's backyard and show all of college football, hey, we may belong with the Big 12, but we do have that SEC mantra. You will respect us when we get to the conference on July 1st. In fact, somebody at the big boy table, you're going to want to make a reservation in a front row seat at the kiddie table, because we're about ready to kick your ass out of there. They've also shown you at times that they were negligent. There were multiple games where you felt like Ewers was not finding his own wagon, whether it be overthrown passes to Xavier Worthy, whether it be short completions to Jordan Whittington, whether it be not trusting his tight ends, whether it be trying to do a little bit too much. There's a lot to like about Quinn Ewers' game, certainly, to say the least. But there also was a lot to like about Adonai Mitchell, who the second when he touched down in Austin went from being a minuscule average wide receiver in the SEC to a household fixture and arguably the second best #2 in college football. You look at guys like Ja'Tavion Sanders and what they were able to bring. He goes down in history as one of the best tight ends in program history. You look at Xavier Worthy, what he was able to do, breaking Roy Williams' record for the most touchdowns and receiving yards in Big 12 history and also in Texas history as a freshman and a late arrival. This is not a kid that got on campus in spring and said, I'm going to build a relationship with Casey Thompson. I'm going to learn this offense. No, he was doing it while also taking classes in high school and then coming over in the summer months to learn a little bit more and adapt to that level. And yet still, the Longhorns went 8-5 and 12-2. And yes, the one loss did come to a very underrated, in my opinion, Oklahoma team. And it also was in a neutral site location. So throw records, throw standings, throw metrics out the window. This is a spit-swapping rivalry between 2 disdained foes that are more than happy to admit we belong in the SEC more than you do. And they're definitely going to shed blood next season whenever they touch down in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. So besides that, Ewers was great. But Did you ever feel like that he was elite by any standards? Going into the SEC next season, there's conversations about who are the top passers, and naturally, Ewers has to be in every conversation simply because of what he did last year, leading the Longhorns to their first Big 12 title in over a decade, but on top of that, also leading the team to a college football playoff berth. And now with expansion of the playoff, everyone expects Texas to be right in the forefront. In fact, some people believe Texas can end up actually being a legit threat against Georgia, against Alabama, against Ole Miss and Missouri, and all of the teams that have established themselves as up-and-comers or fixtures of the SEC in 2023. And they can. They absolutely can. That's not a Quinn Ewers knock, or it's not a Quinn Ewers praise. One thing that we talk about all the time in media is we hitch our wagon to one finite detail. Ewers was a problem last year. I'm going to come out and completely say it. I do not think that he is the best quarterback in the SEC. I don't even think he's number 2. I believe that title, as of this morning, belongs to Jackson Dart. And then we can have a conversation. Does Ewers belong at number 3? Are we going to trust that Nico Iamaleava is about ready to blow the gasket off of Neyland Stadium and bring 1998 feels back to Knoxville? Maybe. Maybe Brady Cook continues to have a good year. He's got the repetition and the wide receivers, so you feel confident there. You do realize that Texas had one of the worst pass defenses in college football last year, and they struggled at times, especially in the Sugar Bowl against Washington. And if not for the offense fighting in a little bit of momentum and the defense getting a critical stop in the fourth quarter, this is not a close game. This is a game, in fact, where you say, well, Ewers was probably more so the problem, which is funny because last season when they played against them in the Alamo Bowl, Ewers threw for a career-high 368 yards. Is that the wide receivers? Is that the weaponry? Is that the offensive play calling? All those things aside, there's reasons why Texas struggled this season. Ewers was part of it, but he wasn't the only one. And so this offseason, once again, you look at Steve Sarkisian. What did he do to make sure that he mitigated the flaws? Like any good coach would. He brought in talent that would hinder or hide any negativity surrounding number 3. You go and add in a Silas Bolden. That is a speed demon that is going to take a 5-yard hitch pattern and turn it into a 25-yard gain. You added in Matthew Golden, another premier wide receiver, good complementary piece opposite any number 1 that was an all Big 12 punt returner, kick returner, and had decent numbers as a wide receiver. Isaiah Bond. Whether or not we want to talk about 4th and 31, it's a big deal in Tuscaloosa folklore, but he also was primarily the reason why Alabama beat Georgia a week later in Atlanta to hoist their own SEC title. You also still have Jonte Cook on the roster. You still have a ton of younger receivers behind him. You added in yet another 4-star talent this offseason. There are weapons, and Sark said, I'm going to go out and do everything possible to make sure that nobody is talking about our quarterback situation, whether that's because of Arch Manning is pushing forward to end up winning the starting job, whether that's because you look at what is going to be the expectations going into next year. Whatever it is, Sark made sure that every piece was covered, including tight end with the addition of Amari Niblack. And you also still have Gunnar Helm on the roster, plus a tandem in the running back room, which could end up seeing one of them walk away with the Doak Walker Award. There's very little flaws with this team. So going into this year, you look at what Worthy was, you look at what Mitchell was, you look at what Sanders was and Whittington was and what the running back room looked like, and you say to yourself, well, what more does Ewers have to do to prove that he's not the problem? Simply put, be the solution. That's just the case in point of it. There's really not another way to put it. There's going to be games where you see the wide receivers take maybe a little bit of a step back. They aren't able to create separation against certain defensive backs. The SEC is its own entity. You'll see a 3-star that is properly developed, really well trained, shown the ropes, and eventually they're going to be better than the 5-star that commits to any other conference. Why? Because the level of competition they go up against. And that's going to be the case for Texas this year. But they also have a game against Michigan in Ann Arbor, where arguably the best cornerback in college football resides in Will Johnson. So is that a game where Ewers can say, I know that I'm without my number 1 target, but instead I have to pick up the pace. Consistency, consistency, consistency. Don't worry about blowing for the big time shot downfield. Worry about picking up the first down. Next play mantra. Because as of right now, the whole recency bias feeling is going to be, well, Ewers was a product of the system and had exceptional help. And there's reasons to believe that, especially when you look at what Worthy was able to produce this past week in Indianapolis. And then Adonai Mitchell shows up and says, hey, you know what? Worthy's pretty fast, but nobody seems to like to talk about me. I'm going to run a 4.34 and show everybody, yeah, he was fast, but I was just as quick. And if Ewers gets that ball out maybe a millisecond sooner, you're talking about the Longhorns marching into Ann Arbor week 2, my apologies. And that's a rematch of the national championship. That's a rematch which could have been completely different. We could have had an entire scenario, and there is a world out there. I truly do believe in the cinematic universe, what Marvel created. The multiverse is real, so get over it. There is a world out there where Texas is the national champion, and several of these players are gone, including potentially Ewers, who had nothing left to prove in Austin. There is a world out there where that exists, and one of those worlds would feature the national champion Longhorns marching into Ann Arbor, where maybe Jim Harbaugh is still on the sidelines. That's a story for a different time, neither the point. But going into next year, there's questions when it comes to who is QB1. It could be Ewers. But right now, after seeing what you just watched in Indianapolis, you're going to have to take it with a grain of salt. Here's the good news. Sark added in pieces. Here's the good news. The offensive line is stable. 4 of the 5 starters returning. You have arguably the best left tackle in the SEC, provenly, in Kelvin Banks Jr. He's going to be a top 10 pick in next year's draft. You have a solidified defense that added in pieces that are probably going to be fixtures of the SEC. Some already are, that you've already heard of. And you also still have really good coaching. Sark, whether or not you believe he is elite, he is a damn good coach. The culture has drastically changed underneath Tom Herman and Charlie Strong. Because you got to remember, Texas still landed 5-star talents left and right. 4 stars love to go to the 40 acres. It was about the development of talent. Name the last time that a first-round pick came out of Austin before Bijan Robinson. It was 2015. That was the end of the Charlie Strong era. That was the entire Tom Herman era. Never a day one talent resided in the likes of Austin until Steve Sarkisian got there. And that could be the biggest blessing for a guy like Ewers. But this is a major year for the likes of the Longhorns. And more importantly, it's a major year for Ewers. He's going to go up against quality competition. He's going to have a one-on-one against Carson Beck that many people believe is the SEC QB1. And it's hard-pressed to argue with it. I think when you look at the Longhorns right now, their status truly resides on if Ewers can be the guy. Because I do think that they will end up still being 10-2, 11-1. They can make it to the college football playoff, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye. But national championship status. Now that we know that Adonai Mitchell, Jatavion Sanders, and Xavier Worthy were staples of this offense and may have even been the backbone last season, pressure's on for number 3 to be the number 1 option. And if you can do so, the Longhorns, they're going to compete alongside Georgia, alongside Alabama. They may even win the SEC title in year 1. Nobody should be shocked. But if there's struggles, you might want to turn back to the quarterback room. And those in Austin that are looking to see potentially number 16 strut his stuff, you might get your wish if a few mishaps happen along the way. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC Unfiltered, the ring notification. That way you keep up with everything that we're doing on this channel. Follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, my own YouTube channel at Mr. Cole Thompson. Follow us on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever you have social media at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Google Play, Apple Music, Spotify. We got you covered everywhere. And to keep up with everything going on in the number 1 conference in all of college athletics, make sure that you visit SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks, later.